I can't afford it." The words were barely louder than a whisper, but they cut through the supermarket like a blade. The young mother stood at the checkout, cheeks burning, holding a carton of milk in trembling hands. Her daughter clutched her leg, eyes fixed on the bottle, lips dry. The cashier sighed, already reaching to take it back. "I'm sorry," the woman said again, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "I'll put it back." That's when someone behind her spoke. "Don't." The entire line froze. The man's voice was calm, low, heavy with authority. A suit worth more than the store itself. Eyes that had seen fear bend before them. The Mafia boss had watched everything. The milk, the little girl, the way the mother turned away so her daughter wouldn't see the tears. He stepped forward slowly, and in that moment, no one in that store knew why this powerful man, a man who owned half the city, was staring at a single carton of milk like it mattered more than money ever had. Stay with me until the end, because what he does next for that mother and child will silence the entire room and change 3 lives forever. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the rows of cereal boxes and canned goods. It was just past 9 in the evening at Murphy's Corner Market, the kind of neighborhood store where every face was familiar and every story was known. The automatic doors wheezed open and closed with mechanical precision, letting in the cool October air that carried the scent of rain and fallen leaves. Maria Santos pushed her cart through the narrow aisles, her 4-year-old daughter Sophia walking beside her with careful steps. The little girl's shoes squeaked against the linoleum floor, worn thin from countless trips to this same store. Maria's eyes scanned the shelves methodically, calculating prices in her head with the precision of someone who counted every penny twice. 24 hours earlier, Maria had been fired from her job at the textile factory. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired. The supervisor had handed her a pink slip with apologetic eyes and 2 weeks severance pay that wouldn't even cover next month's rent. She'd walked to her car in the employee parking lot, sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, and cried until her chest ached. But Sophia needed milk. Growing children couldn't wait for better circumstances. Maria reached for the store brand carton, the cheapest option available. Even then, the price tag made her stomach twist. $3.49. She had exactly $17.12 in her wallet, money that needed to stretch until she found another job. Rent was due in 2 weeks. The electric bill sat unopened on her kitchen counter. Sophia's pediatrician appointment was scheduled for Friday. Behind them, 3 aisles away, Vincent Torino examined a bottle of imported olive oil with the same intensity most people reserved for legal documents. His charcoal gray suit was tailored to perfection, each thread precisely placed. The kind of man who commanded rooms without speaking. The kind of man whose reputation preceded him into every conversation. Vincent Torino wasn't supposed to be in Murphy's Corner Market. Men like him had assistants for grocery shopping, drivers who handled mundane errands, entire staffs dedicated to ensuring he never had to concern himself with the trivial mechanics of daily life. But tonight was different. Tonight, he needed to think. The Castellano family had made their move earlier that afternoon, a bold play for the docks that Vincent had been orchestrating for 6 months. 3 phone calls and a carefully worded message had dismantled what should have been a straightforward negotiation. Now Vincent needed to recalibrate. He needed to walk among regular people, to remember what the world looked like outside of boardrooms and private clubs. He'd dismissed his driver at 8:30 and walked the 12 blocks from his penthouse to this unremarkable corner store. The security detail trailing behind maintained their distance, professional ghosts in expensive shoes. Vincent picked up a jar of marinara sauce, not because he needed it, but because the motion gave him something to do with his hands, while his mind worked through possibilities. He'd built his empire by reading people, by understanding their motivations before they understood them themselves. Every gesture mattered. Every word carried weight. As he moved through the store, Vincent became aware of the other customers. A teenager buying energy drinks and candy. An elderly man selecting frozen dinners for one. A young woman with a small child, moving with the careful deliberation of someone operating on a strict budget. Something about the woman caught his attention. Perhaps it was the way she paused before each selection, her lips moving silently as she calculated costs. Perhaps it was how her daughter stayed close, understanding instinctively that this wasn't a trip for wants, only for absolute needs. Vincent had grown up in neighborhoods like this, before the money, before the power, before his name became synonymous with influence that reached into every corner of the city. He remembered his own mother standing in similar aisles, making similar calculations. The weight of responsibility that pressed down on single parents, the impossible mathematics of making too little money cover too many needs. Maria approached the checkout counter with Sophia's small hand clasped firmly in hers. The cashier, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, began scanning items with mechanical efficiency. A loaf of bread, a small container of peanut butter, a package of pasta. Each beep of the scanner felt like a countdown. The milk came last. Vincent watched from his position near the magazine rack. Close, enough to observe, but far enough to remain unnoticed. He saw Maria's shoulders tense as the total climbed higher than expected. He saw her reach into her purse, fingers counting bills that suddenly seemed insufficient. The cashier announced the total, $18.73. Maria's face went pale. Her hand froze inside her purse. She looked down at Sophia, who was staring up at her with complete trust, complete faith that her mother would handle whatever needed handling. "I can't afford it," Maria said, her voice barely audible. The words hung in the air like smoke. The entire store seemed to hold its breath. The teenager with the energy drink stopped scrolling through his phone. The elderly man paused his examination of frozen dinners. Even the background music seemed to fade into silence. Sophia looked from her mother to the carton of milk sitting on the counter. Her small hand reached toward it instinctively, then pulled back when she saw her mother's expression. The cashier's face softened with practiced sympathy. She'd seen this scene before, would see it again. "I'm sorry, honey," she said gently, already reaching for the milk. "We can put this back." That's when Vincent stepped forward. "Don't." The word carried the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Every head in the store turned toward him. Maria looked up, startled by the interruption. The cashier's hand froze above the milk carton. Vincent approached the counter with measured steps, his presence filling the space like a gathering storm. His eyes met Maria's briefly, and in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, or simply the acknowledgement of one human being seeing another's struggle. He reached into his jacket pocket, and for just a moment, the tension in the store ratcheted higher. But what he withdrew wasn't what anyone expected. It was a simple black leather wallet, worn at the edges, softened by years of use. The kind of wallet that held more than money. It held memories. Vincent pulled out a crisp $100 bill and placed it on the counter beside Maria's groceries. The paper made no sound as it settled, but the impact was deafening. Every eye in the store fixed on that single piece of currency like it was a miracle made manifest. The cashier stared at the bill, then at Vincent, then back at the bill. Her hand hovered over it uncertainly, as if touching it might break some unspoken spell. "Pay for her groceries," Vincent said quietly. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Keep the change for yourself." Maria's breath caught in her throat. She looked up at this stranger, this man whose very presence seemed to shift the atmosphere of the entire store. There was something in his eyes she couldn't quite identify. Not pity, not charity. Something deeper, something that spoke of understanding born from experience. "Sir, I can't accept this," Maria managed to whisper. Her voice trembled with a mixture of gratitude and pride. This is too much. Vincent's expression softened almost imperceptibly. For just a moment, the mask of authority slipped, revealing something vulnerable underneath, something human. "My mother used to stand where you're standing," he said, his words measured and deliberate. "Same choice, same impossible mathematics. She always found a way, but it shouldn't have been so hard." The silence in the store stretched like a held breath. Even Sophia seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, her small hand tightening around her mother's fingers. Vincent knelt down slowly, bringing himself to Sophia's eye level. His expensive suit creased at the knees, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Up close, his face was gentler than his reputation suggested. Lines around his eyes that spoke of laughter alongside the harder truths of his world. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice taking on a warmth that surprised everyone listening. "Sophia," the little girl replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's a beautiful name." Vincent smiled, and for a moment, he looked like any grandfather might look when speaking to a child. "Do you know what my favorite part of the grocery store is?" Sophia shook her head, wide eyes fixed on his face. "The milk section," Vincent said with mock seriousness, "because milk helps little girls grow up to be strong and smart and brave, and I think you're going to be all three of those things." Sophia giggled, the sound breaking through the tension like sunlight through clouds. Even Maria found herself smiling despite the tears gathering in her eyes. Vincent stood slowly, his attention returning to Maria. His expression grew more serious, but not unkind. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Tomorrow morning, go to Delacroix Construction on 5th Street. Ask for Tony Ricci. Tell him Vincent sent you. They need someone for their office, handling schedules and invoices. The pay is fair. The hours work with a school schedule." Maria stared at him in disbelief. "You don't even know me," she said. "Why would you do this?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old memories. "Because 30 years ago, my mother stood in a store just like this one, and nobody helped her. She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, slept 4 hours a night, and never once complained. She deserved better than that struggle." He paused, looking down at Sophia, who was now clutching the milk carton like a treasure. "Every child deserves to see their parents smile instead of worry," Vincent continued. "Every mother deserves to sleep at night knowing tomorrow is taken care of." The cashier had been listening with tears in her own eyes. With shaking hands, she processed the payment, the register's mechanical sounds seeming almost sacred in the silence. She handed Maria the receipt and the change, a small fortune in bills and coins. "Thank you," Maria whispered, the words inadequate for the magnitude of what had just occurred. "I don't know how to repay this kindness." Vincent shook his head. "You don't repay kindness. You pass it forward. Someday, when you're in a position to help someone else, you remember this moment. You remember that small gestures can change everything." As Maria gathered her groceries, Sophia tugged on Vincent's sleeve. He looked down at her expectantly. "Are you an angel?" Sophia asked with the innocent directness that only children possess. Vincent laughed, a rich sound that seemed to surprise him as much as anyone else. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a man who remembers what it feels like to need help." The other customers in the store had been watching this entire exchange with fascination. The teenager with the energy drinks was recording on his phone, tears streaming down his face. The elderly man was openly weeping, remembering his own struggles from decades past. As Maria and Sophia prepared to leave, Vincent called out one more time, "Maria." She turned back, Sophia's hand in hers. "The job interview is at 9 tomorrow morning. Don't be late. And Maria, wear something that makes you feel confident. You've got this." Maria nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. She guided Sophia toward the exit, both of them moving like people in a dream. As the automatic doors closed behind them, Vincent remained at the counter. The cashier was still staring at him with something approaching reverence. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she said softly. Vincent picked up his bottle of olive oil, the original reason for his presence in this unremarkable store. "No," he replied, watching through the window as Maria buckled Sophia into an old car in the parking lot. "The beautiful thing will be watching that little girl grow up knowing her mother never had to choose between dignity and necessity again." He walked toward the exit, leaving behind a store full of people who would remember this night for the rest of their lives. Each of them had witnessed something extraordinary. Not just generosity, but the kind of human connection that reminded everyone present why kindness mattered. Vincent's security detail fell into step behind him as he emerged into the cool October air. The city stretched out before him, millions of lights representing millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of struggles just like Maria's. For the first time in months, Vincent Torino felt something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. He felt hope. Hope. But Vincent's story was far from over. As his black sedan pulled away from Murphy's Corner Market, something fundamental had shifted inside him. The man who controlled shipping routes and construction contracts, who decided the fate of businesses with a single phone call, couldn't stop thinking about a 4-year-old girl asking if he was an angel. 3 blocks from his penthouse, Vincent made a decision that would have surprised anyone who knew him. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Marcus," he said when the line connected. "It's Vincent. I need you to do something for me." Marcus Delacroix had been Vincent's childhood friend before their paths diverged into legitimate business and shadowy enterprises. They'd grown up on the same streets, shared the same struggles, but Marcus had chosen the straight path. Now he ran one of the city's most successful construction companies. "Jesus, Vinny," Marcus said, using the nickname only childhood friends were allowed. "It's been what, 2 years? You calling to finally take me up on that fishing trip?" "I need a job for someone," Vincent said directly. "A woman named Maria Santos, single mother, recently unemployed. She'll be there tomorrow morning at 9. There was a pause on the other end. Marcus knew Vincent well enough to understand that this wasn't a request. It was something deeper. "What's the story?" Marcus asked carefully. Vincent stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. How could he explain what had happened in that store? How could he describe the moment when Sophia's innocent question had cracked something open inside him? "She needed help," Vincent said simply. "Good people shouldn't have to choose between dignity and survival." "All right," Marcus replied without hesitation. "I'll take care of it. What kind of work? Office management, scheduling, invoices, phones, something stable, something that pays enough for a mother to sleep at night? Consider it done." "Vinny?" Marcus paused. "You okay? You sound different." Vincent considered the question as his driver navigated through downtown traffic. Was he okay? For the first time in years, he thought he might be. "I'm figuring that out," he said finally, and ended the call. Meanwhile, in her small apartment across town, Maria sat at her kitchen table staring at the handful of bills Vincent had left as change. $81.27. More money than she'd held at one time in months. Sophia was already asleep, the milk safely stored in their refrigerator, but Maria couldn't quiet her racing thoughts. She'd spent the drive home trying to process what had happened. The stranger's kindness felt too enormous to be real, too perfect to be anything but a dream. But the groceries sitting on her counter were proof. The business card for Delacroix Construction that Vincent had slipped her was real. The interview tomorrow was real. Maria had learned long ago that life rarely offered second chances without strings attached. Her ex-husband had taught her that lesson with brutal efficiency. When something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. But something about Vincent's eyes, the way he'd spoken to Sophia, the careful respect in his voice when he addressed her, felt genuine. She opened her laptop and searched for Delacroix Construction. The website showed a thriving company with dozens of projects across the city. Real work. Legitimate business. The kind of place where she could build something stable for herself and Sophia. As she researched, Maria found herself thinking about Vincent's words. You don't repay kindness, you pass it forward. The concept felt foreign to someone who'd spent years barely surviving, but it also felt like a promise, a way to transform tonight's miracle into something lasting. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, October asserting itself with typical unpredictability. Maria dropped Sophia at her neighbor's apartment, kissing her daughter's forehead and promising to be back soon. She'd chosen her best dress, a navy blue piece she'd worn to job interviews before, and added her grandmother's pearl necklace for confidence. Delacroix Construction occupied a converted warehouse in an industrial district that was slowly gentrifying. The building hummed with activity even at 8:45 in the morning. Trucks loaded with materials rumbled in and out of the lot. Workers in hard hats moved with purpose between stacks of lumber and concrete. Maria approached the main office, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the windows, she could see people working at computers, answering phones, coordinating the complex logistics of multiple construction projects. This was real work, real opportunity. The receptionist, a woman about Maria's age with kind eyes and a warm smile, looked up as she entered. Good morning, Maria said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I'm Maria Santos. I have an appointment with Mr. Ricci. Of course, the receptionist replied. Tony's expecting you. I'm Linda, by the way. I run the front desk and about half the scheduling around here. She led Maria through a hallway lined with photographs of completed projects. Shopping centers, office buildings, residential developments. Each image represented jobs, families fed, communities built. The scope of it overwhelmed Maria in the best possible way. Tony Ricci's office was practical and unpretentious. A man in his 50s with calloused hands and paint-stained work boots rose from behind a desk covered in blueprints and project timelines. Miss Santos, he said, extending his hand. Vincent told me to expect you. They sat down across from each other, and Tony studied Maria with the same intensity he might apply to architectural plans, but his expression was warm, curious rather than judgmental. Tell me about yourself, he said simply. Maria had prepared for this moment, but sitting here in this real office with this real opportunity, her practiced answers felt inadequate. Instead, she found herself speaking from the heart. I'm a single mother, she began. I lost my job yesterday at the textile plant. I've been working since I was 16, putting myself through night school, trying to build something stable for my daughter. I'm good with numbers, organized, reliable. I show up, I work hard, and I need this chance more than I can put into words. Tony nodded slowly. Vincent mentioned you have a daughter. How old? 4. Sophia. She's the reason I get up every morning. Childcare arrangements? My neighbor watches her after school. I can work any hours that fit with Sophia's schedule. Tony leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Here's the thing, Maria. Vincent Torino isn't a man who asks for favors lightly. When he calls me and says someone needs help, I pay attention. But I don't hire people as charity cases. This job is real work. We coordinate schedules for 8 different project sites. We manage vendor relationships, handle invoicing, deal with city permits. It's demanding. Maria felt her chest tighten. Was this the moment where kindness revealed its limitations? But, Tony continued, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I can usually tell within 5 minutes if someone has what it takes. You walked in here scared, but determined. You looked me in the eye when you spoke. You talked about your daughter like she was your motivation, not your burden. Those are the qualities I need in this office. He reached across his desk and picked up a folder. The job starts at $42,000 a year, plus health benefits. 2 weeks paid vacation, sick leave, and we're closed between Christmas and New Year's. Standard hours are 8 to 5, but we're flexible when family situations require it. Sound like something you'd be interested in? Maria stared at him, certain she'd misheard. $42,000 was more money than she'd ever made in a single year. Health benefits meant Sophia could see a doctor without Maria lying awake calculating costs. Paid vacation was a concept so foreign she couldn't immediately process it. Yes, she whispered, then cleared her throat and spoke with more conviction. Yes, Mr. Ricci. I'm very interested. Tony, he corrected with a smile. We don't stand on ceremony around here. Can you start Monday? I can start today, Maria replied, then caught herself. I mean, Monday is perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. As Tony explained her responsibilities and introduced her to the rest of the office staff, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Security. Not just financial security, though that was overwhelming enough, but the deeper security that came from being valued, from being part of something meaningful. Linda showed her the scheduling system, explaining how projects flowed from initial bid to completion. The work was complex, but logical, requiring exactly the kind of organizational skills Maria had developed through years of managing a household on an impossible budget. You're going to do great here, Linda said as they finished the orientation. Tony's a good boss, and Vincent Torino obviously sees something special in you. You know Vincent? Maria asked, surprised. Everyone in construction knows Vincent, Linda replied carefully. He's got interests in half the development projects in the city, but Tony's told me they go way back. Childhood friends, different paths in life, but they've maintained respect for each other. If Vincent vouched for you, that carries real weight around here. As Maria left the Delacroix building with a start date, employee handbook, and a head spinning with new possibilities, she thought about Vincent's words from the night before. Every child deserves to see their parents smile instead of worry. For the first time in Sophia's life, Maria realized that might actually be possible. But across town, Vincent was discovering that his act of kindness had created ripples he hadn't anticipated. Word traveled fast in his world, and by noon, 3 different associates had called to discuss the incident at Murphy's Corner Market. The teenager's phone video had gone viral overnight. Millions of views of a mysterious man in an expensive suit helping a struggling mother. The comments ranged from heartwarming to suspicious to wildly speculative about the man's identity. Vincent's face was partially obscured in the footage, but people in certain circles recognized the stance, the bearing, the unmistakable presence. This kind of attention was the last thing a man in Vincent's position needed. Vincent's phone buzzed incessantly throughout the afternoon. Text messages from lieutenants, calls from business partners, even a concerned message from his lawyer. The video had reached the wrong eyes, and in his world, visibility was often a death sentence. Boss, came the voice of Detective Ray Morrison, one of Vincent's longest-standing contacts in the police department. We need to talk. That video's making rounds in places you don't want it making rounds. Vincent stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a living organism. Every building, every street, every corner had a story. Most of those stories involved him in some way. How bad is it? Vincent asked, though he already knew the answer. Federal task force picked it up this morning. They've been building a case for 18 months, looking for any crack in your armor. Suddenly you're St. Vincent helping poor mothers? They smell publicity stunt. They smell weakness. And Vincent, Ray paused, choosing his words carefully. They smell opportunity. The line went dead. Vincent set the phone down and walked to his safe, a massive steel vault hidden behind a false wall. Inside, among the documents and cash and items better left undescribed, sat a photograph. His mother, Elena Torino, at 26 years old, holding a grocery bag and smiling despite the exhaustion in her eyes. She'd been beautiful then, before the years of struggle wore her down, before working 3 jobs stole her youth, before the neighborhood changed and the good people moved away and the wolves moved in. Vincent had built his empire on a simple promise to that photograph. No one would ever make his family choose between dignity and survival again. But now that empire was under threat because of a moment of humanity in a grocery store. His phone rang again. This time, the caller ID made his blood run cold. Salvatore Castellano. Vincent, my friend, came the oily voice through the speaker. I saw the most interesting video today. Very heartwarming, very public. What do you want, Sal? Want? I want nothing. I'm calling to congratulate you. Such a touching display of charity. Although I have to wonder, Castellano's voice took on a predatory edge. What kind of message does this send to your associates? To your enemies? Vincent Torino, the feared businessman, reduced to buying milk for strangers? Vincent gripped the phone tighter. Salvatore Castellano had been circling like a vulture for months, looking for any sign of weakness to exploit. The docks deal had been just the beginning. Now he had ammunition. Careful, Sal, Vincent said, his voice dropping to the register that had intimidated boardrooms for decades. You're mistaking kindness for weakness. That's a fatal error in judgment. Castellano laughed, a sound like broken glass. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're going soft, Vincent. Perhaps it's time for younger, hungrier men to take control of this city's opportunities. The threat was unmistakable. Vincent ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Within minutes, his security chief, Tommy Marchetti, entered the office. Tommy was a mountain of a man who'd taken bullets for Vincent and never complained once. We've got problems, Vincent said without preamble. The video from last night has Castellano circling. He's going to make a move, probably within the week. Tommy nodded grimly. I've already doubled security at all the key locations. The docks, the construction sites, even had extra men positioned around that woman's apartment. Vincent looked up sharply. Maria's apartment? Why? Because if Castellano wants to hurt you, he'll look for pressure points. That video made her a pressure point. The realization hit Vincent like a physical blow. His moment of kindness hadn't just exposed him to federal scrutiny and business rivals. It had put an innocent woman and her child directly in harm's way. Maria Santos, who'd done nothing but struggle to buy milk for her daughter, was now a target because of his compassion. Pull the men back, Vincent said immediately. If Castellano sees security around her, it confirms she matters to me. That makes her more valuable as leverage. Boss, with respect, that's a mistake. If something happens to her, it's because I was selfish enough to help her publicly instead of quietly. Vincent turned away from the window, his mind racing through possibilities. There's another way to handle this. 3 hours later, Vincent sat in the back of his sedan outside Maria's apartment building. It was a modest complex in a neighborhood that was safe but far from affluent. Children played on a small patch of grass while their parents watched from lawn chairs. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their new neighbor had become a pawn in a dangerous game. Vincent had never felt more out of place. Maria emerged from the building at precisely 5:30, Sophia's hand clasped in hers. The little girl was chattering excitedly about something, her face animated with the pure joy that only children possess. Maria looked different than she had the night before. The desperate edge was gone, replaced by something Vincent recognized as hope. He rolled down the window as they approached the sidewalk. Maria. She turned, startled to see him again. Vincent stepped out of the car, his presence immediately drawing curious glances from the other residents. But for once, he didn't care about appearances or the careful distance he usually maintained. I need to tell you something, he said quietly, approaching Maria and Sophia. That job at Delacroix Construction. Take it. But more than that, I need you to understand what happened last night changed everything. Maria studied his face, seeing something vulnerable beneath the composed exterior. Changed everything, how? Vincent knelt down to Sophia's level one more time. The little girl beamed at him with innocent recognition. Remember what I told you about being strong and smart and brave? Sophia nodded enthusiastically. Well, your mama is all three of those things. And sometimes, when we help people, we discover that we're the ones who needed help the most. He stood slowly, his eyes meeting Maria's. That grocery store reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you choose to give. 3 months later, the video from Murphy's Corner Market had been viewed over 50 million times. But the real story wasn't in those viral seconds of footage. It was in the ripple effects that followed. Maria had thrived at Delacroix Construction, her natural organizational skills earning her a promotion within weeks. Sophia started preschool at a program that Vincent quietly funded, not just for her, but for dozens of other children in similar circumstances. The federal investigation had indeed intensified, but something unexpected happened. Other videos began surfacing. Security cameras from construction sites showing Vincent ensuring worker safety. Testimonies from small business owners whose loans had been mysteriously approved after Vincent's involvement. A pattern emerged of a man who used his influence not just for profit, but for protection. Even Salvatore Castellano had miscalculated. His attempted power grab collapsed when key allies refused to move against a man who'd become, almost overnight, a folk hero. The city's most feared businessman had revealed himself to be something more complex, something human. And sometimes, late at night, Vincent would drive past Murphy's Corner Market. The store looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. That moment at the checkout had taught him the most important lesson of his life. True power wasn't measured in fear or control. It was measured in the courage to see someone struggle and choose to help, even when no one was watching. Because in the end, we're all just people trying to afford what matters most. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give isn't money or opportunity. It's the reminder that we're not alone in this world, that someone sees us, that someone cares. That simple act of kindness had rippled outward, touching lives in ways Vincent could never have imagined. And it all started with 3 words that changed everything. I can't afford it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply say, "Don't worry, I've got this."